God isn't real. There's no evidence for God, there's no proof for God. Every time I say this, someone comes at me with their proof and they need to read the dictionary and understand what the dictionary definition of proof is. It's very difficult to prove something. It's actually difficult to prove gravity, let alone God, which doesn't exist. You can't prove something that isn't there. God isn't there, so you haven't got proof for God. In fact, most of you don't even have evidence for God. Your evidence for God is always, well, I was in a car crash and I was supposed to die and I didn't die, or it's coincidences, it's feelings, it's personal experiences. None of those things are evidence. So what religious people do is when they try and get evidence for God is, they point at the lack of evidence for other things. They say, well, how did the universe get created? And I say, well, we don't know exactly. You don't know, so how else could it have been but God? And that's like me walking downstairs into my living room and there's a perfectly wrapped Christmas present. And someone goes, well, how did that get there? And I say, I don't know. And they say, well, it must have been Santa Claus. So, well, how do you know it's Santa Claus? Well, you don't know who else did it, so it's Santa. Lack of evidence or lack of proof in one direction does not instantly throw it in the direction you want it to go in. The crazy thing about religion is this. If everyone was forced to be atheist until the age of 30 and then was told the religious stories and had the choice then if they became religious or remained an atheist, nobody would be religious. There's not a single person who at the age of 30 would sit there and go, okay, tell me how this works. Okay, Virgin Mary, and then he died, he came back to life, and then Nazareth, and then God's in the sky. It's garbage. Every 30-year-old in their right mind would throw that garbage out. The reason people continue to believe into the later ages is because they were indoctrinated and brainwashed as a child, and they feel guilty giving it up. I know some very, very smart people who were still like, oh, well, I don't know. They're afraid to say God doesn't exist because as a child it was drummed into their brains that God is there. God is not there. I absolutely assure you God is not there. When I say this, another thing people come to me with is, well, prove he's not there. And this is the kicker. It's not my job to prove God doesn't exist. It's your job to prove he does exist. You're the one who believes, so you have the burden of proof. If I were to come up to you and say, I have a love letter from Angelina Jolie saying she's going to suck my dick, you'd say, show me the letter. I cannot then reply to you, prove I don't have the letter. And unless you can prove I don't have the letter, then the letter exists. Because there's no way you can prove I don't have the letter. You can call Angelina Jolie up on the phone and say, did you give Andrew a love letter saying you want to suck his dick? And she could say no. And then I could say she was lying. You could search my entire house and I could say it's somewhere else. I put it at my friend's house. You cannot prove I don't have a letter from Angelina Jolie begging to suck my cock. You can't prove it. The only thing I can do, if I'm going to make such an outrageous claim, is prove I do have the letter. Therefore, the burden of proof is on me. The burden of proof is not on the person who disputes the claim. You cannot say to an atheist, prove there's no God. That's ridiculous. You believe in this. You believe in the magic sky man, so show him to me. But you can't. Because if God's real, and this is a huge if, because once again I'll reiterate, God is not real. If God's real, there's two things we need to look at here. One, he's trying exceptionally hard to conceal himself. I mean, this is God here. He's God. He can do anything. He tries exceptionally hard to conceal himself. And when I say this, religious people go, no, God's all around you. Look at a Coke bottle and the way the can. Look at the stars. All garbage. You're looking at things with a pre-conclusive idea that God exists. You've already decided God exists. That's why you're looking at things and seeing God. Well, that's easy. But if you actually don't believe God exists and you're looking for God, he isn't there. And he isn't there because he doesn't exist. So, one, he's trying very hard to conceal himself. And actually, the only evidence he's giving us, the only evidence he puts down to the planet, this is some moron on Twitter telling me God's real. The only evidence he puts on planet, fossils, evolutionary evidence, etc., actually is completely contradictory to God's existence. So the only evidence God's decided to create is evidence which completely fuels the atheist agenda. So congratulations, God. And two, the more important thing, this is actually indisputable. If God is real, which he is not, he's a dickhead. God is a dickhead because of the things that happen to people on this earth. God is a dickhead because babies die. God is a dickhead because people who have never done anything wrong to anybody are fucking run over by cars, while drug dealers live in mansions, fucking hookers and snorting cocaine. Bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people far too often for God to exist. And when I say this, then the religious reply is, but God has a plan. No, he doesn't. And you know he doesn't, because if God has a plan, You wouldn't look both ways before you cross the road. You wouldn't put on your seatbelt. You wouldn't even pay your rent. Why? God has a plan. God's worked it all out for you. Why do you have to look both ways for cars? God decides if he wants you alive or not. Don't worry about it. Just walk out into the middle of the freeway. God has a plan. God hasn't got a fucking plan. And if he does have a plan, his plan is to let the most religious countries in the world, the countries where the most people are religious, the biggest shitholes on this planet, his plan is to let them pray all day for basic human rights and basic human necessities and make sure he provides none of them. Let all the people who pray all day, praying to God for food, starve, and let all the people in the Nordics and Sweden and Norway, where no one believes in God, literally nobody, let them all be some of the richest, most wealthy countries on the planet. That's what God's decided to do. God's obviously decided to take the people who believe in him and punish them and let the people who don't believe live good lives. God is obviously a vindictive asshole.